it's happening in New York, New Jersey, or Long Island. Hear about it with Joe Piscopo. Mornings, 6 to 10 on AM 970. The Answer.
Piscopo in the morning. Oh, my goodness gracious. We are just flying through this Tuesday. It is a 7:46. Pat Cullen is president of the New York State Supreme Court Officers Association. Pat, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, Joe, for having me.
Thank you. We are very, very pro-law enforcement. We appreciate all that you do. You're saying there's a danger in the courtroom. You know, my pop was a lawyer, and I told you this off the air. My pop was shot, man, by a wacky client. So your officers are at risk, and you handle all the officers in the Supreme Court of the state of New York.
Yes, sir.
And then you're affiliated with some of the other unions that cover the lower courts.
Yes, and so the campaign that we're embarking on and continuing today outside of Brooklyn Supreme Court, rally and press conference.
Today you have a press conference today.
Yes, we do. And it's the intention is to make the public aware of the safety concerns that we have. If we don't feel safe in our own workplace as law enforcement officials, how's the public supposed to feel safe?
Very interesting. And Frankie, this is Frankie Fibero said you got to talk about this because you guys are a danger, though. You're a danger. I mean, you got people, the shootings in the courtroom. It's worse now than it ever has been, correct?
Absolutely correct. We've had, just last Wednesday, there was a shooting, a fatal shooting in a courtroom in Pennsylvania. Earlier this summer, there was a fatal incident, gang-related homicide outside of Staten Island Supreme Court. We had some indigent folks murdered in Staten Island not too long ago. There's every single day there are violent incidents in our courts around New York City and the surrounding areas.
People are bringing deadly weapons into the courtroom. And how do they get through all the metal detectors and everything?
Well, that's what we do. That's one of the main focuses of our job is to make sure that they don't get through the metal detector. So we're catching these folks bringing in things like meat cleavers, tasers. Yes.
No, in the courtroom.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're catching these people.
We're catching them at the entrances, knives, guns, you name it, Joe, and they're trying to bring it in. Thank God we're catching them because that's what we're trained to do. But when there's less of us, there's more of a chance of something like that getting through, and obviously then, hurting somebody.
And I see here this ad that you have in the newspaper, New York's court system is in a crisis and waiting to explode. Dangerous. Tell us what we could do about it and what you would like the public to do about it.
Well, first of all, we want to let the public know because the public isn't aware of what we do often. But every New Yorker has contact with the court system in one way, shape, or form. Sometimes multiple times throughout their residency here in New York. We have the busiest court complex in the world, and we want people to know that the staffing cuts by the Office of Court Administration have put their safety at risk. They put our safety at risk, and we're asking the Chief Judge, Janet DiFiore, and the Chief Administrative Judge, Lawrence Marks, to boost our staffing levels to what they once were.
She's a great gal. I'm sure she's listening, correct?
Well, that's the problem is that we have our warnings and our requests have fallen on deaf ears. This is a $3 billion budget that is handed to this branch of government every year, and we're not seeing it. They're hiring judges, they're hiring lawyers, they're hiring non-essential personnel, but it feels like security and safety for not just us and court employees is not as much of a priority as it once was.
And we see even in Rikers Island, they're not getting protected. Why is law enforcement the last group that the politicians go to help? Whether it's a raise, whether it's for safety, what do they expect? You guys just are there, just going to put up with it for crying out loud?
I think the problem's twofold, Joe. I think that number one, you have a problem where people expect that uniforms will always be there. They'll badmount them until they need them, and then they're there. And so that becomes a problem. So you almost become taken advantage of. And so it's always, these people need these jobs, and they'll do whatever we say.
But you're telling
That's
me
why the contracts are terrible every year after year, and the protections and staffing and these types of things. The other issue is just, there's a lot of budgetary constraints. But when you are handed $3 billion a year, the tax-paying public has a reasonable expectation that that money should be spent on priorities like their own safety and security when they enter. I mean, how would somebody feel if their elderly mom was called to jury duty and they're coming into court and there are, deadly weapons being trying to be brought into the court? That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
troubling for anybody.
Yeah. So what can we do about it, and where can people go to learn more?
So
Pat?
we the ad that you saw in the paper, we are going to pass out at every courthouse in the city every day to every person entering a courthouse until the Office of Court Administration will meet with us and ask us, what it is that they can do to help us cure these shortages that we're encountering. We ask anybody out there interested to call Chief Judge Janet DeFiore at 212-661-6787 or Chief Administrative Judge Lawrence Marks at 212-428-2120. And, enough is enough, and we ask them to make our courthouses safer for everyone.
Yeah, and you can't argue with that. Pat Cullen, president of the New York State Supreme Court Officers Association. Keep the fight, man.
Thanks, Joe, for having me. Really important. Thank you.
More than welcome always. God bless, and thanks for watching out for your men and women in law enforcement. Appreciate that.
Everybody knows this guy. Now, everybody knows he can do a radio show. Joe Piscopo. Mornings, 6 to 10 on AM 970. The Answer.